worked in a haunted hotel a few years ago. This place was massive because it was actually a country club with a small hotel, restaurant, ballroom, swimming pool, etc. The most common freaky thing to happen was guests reporting seeing a woman in white. We could never make sense of who she was, but she was always popping up all over the hotel, especially in the women's bathroom upstairs and scaring the shit out of guests and maids. I never saw her, but I did hear her walking one day in the basement. The basement was a large room with a walk-in freezer right in the center. There was a group of about 5 of us down there unloading a truck, and we heard the sound of high heels walking loudly on the cement floor on the other side of the walk-in freezer. They got louder as they approached, and then as soon as we should have seen who was making the noise, it stopped. No one else down there but us. The same woman in white was responsible for a receptionist quitting on her first day. She called down to the desk and ordered ice to be sent to her room. There wasn't usually more than 1 or 2 rooms booked in the hotel, so the receptionist didn't ask her what room. She goes to the log to look and see what room was booked, and there was nobody in the hotel that night. She immediately moped right out of there. There was also one hotel room specifically that was very haunted, and we would hear noises coming from it daily and find the furniture rearranged. It got to the point where it was just more annoying than anything to have to keep cleaning up after the damn ghosts. My favorite story happened to a coworker of mine. He was working late cleaning up after a small private party. We would use the ballroom for table and chair storage when we weren't using it, so he walks in there with a stack of chairs, and there is a Christmas party going on. Hundreds of people dressed in suits and evening gowns enjoying a beautiful party. My friend was super embarrassed that he barged right in there with a stack of chairs and leaves as fast as he can. He sets the chairs down in the hallway and goes to ask where to put them since the ballroom is being used. He stops for a second and realizes how late it is. It was past midnight and we never had parties go on that late. He walks back over to the door and opens it up to blackness. The lights are off in the ballroom and all the people are gone. Back in 2015, I was staying in a hostel in Chiang Mai, Thailand. Overall, the place wasn't bad. It was a bit of a party hostel, which I wasn't feeling too much at the time, but nothing awful, and it was relatively cheap. I'm with a couple of friends, meet up with an old one and their dorm mate who all move into our bunk room. 2 guys, 3 girls. We had been out at a bar drinking and eating some food before returning to the hostel fairly late, and quite drunk but still got our wits about us. We get to our room and we're hanging out for a bit before we start hearing a commotion in the room opposite, and it distinctly sounds like a woman screaming, being hit, slapped, and absolutely petrified. It was obviously incredibly horrible to hear, and we decided we should intervene rather than ignore it, and we have no idea who is in there, but presumably fellow backpackers. Now, I am by no means a big guy, but I was the biggest of our bunch. So I'm at the front door of our group, and I bang my fist on the door while one of the girls runs to get someone from the front desk. The door swings open, and we can see a terrified and visibly shaken Thai woman in the back of the room. And at the door is a terrifying, raging Thai man who had eyes filled with anger. There's a bit of a standoff, especially with the language barrier, and I'm honestly quite scared. At this point, up runs one of the staff members from the front desk looking panicked, and she shouts at us to go back to our room, and they will handle it, and come back to talk to us. We're confused, but go back into our room. What felt like an eternity passed before the staff member knocks our door and tells us we have done something dangerous and stupid. The man whose door we banged on and confronted was a local and important mafia guy who is furious that Westerners have insulted him. We're all pretty shocked and feel the gravity of the situation, and the staff member encourages us to leave the hostel in the morning to find a new place as it wasn't a good idea to stay any longer. So, cue a poor night's sleep, wake up early and jump in an open-air taxi pickup to move on to a new place. Now we're all going in separate directions that morning as we've all got different plans. So I jump in this pickup myself and tell the driver the address, sit back and feel the motion of the vehicle start. We turn a few corners and I look out the back and none other than the dang guy from the night before is following directly behind on a motorbike, staring straight at me. Obviously, I'm shitting myself and thinking the absolutely worst. Now I have no idea if this guy was purposely following or not. But as we entered further into the city and through traffic, turns, etc., he's suddenly no longer in sight. Needless to say, I got the driver to drop me a street away from my next hostel, and I bolted there as quick as I could, before feeling relieved and anxious, and wondering what the hell happened in the last 12 hours. Anyways, that's among my worst staying in a cheap hotel hostel story, though having done some backpacking around, I've definitely got a few more. Was about 25 at the time, and I was moving solo. Super stoked. My family lives on the East Coast, and I was driving solo all the way across the United States to live on the West Coast. It was scary and exciting at the same time. You see a lot of weird things, but really it gets kind of boring. But my story involves a little town in Montana called Missoula. Well, little by what I saw. Cool rivers and stuff. There was this Days Inn there. It's been about 15 years, so I don't know if it's still there. Anyway, I stopped there for the night because I was tired. No biggie. They only had one room available, and I swear it was the room right out of a horror film. It was located on the second floor, and the second floor walkway ended at it. So, if a monster was going to eat me and trapped me in that corner, I was done for. Anyway, the door had 2x4s holding the frame together, and when I went in there, my vibes were already tweaking, and it was just dark, like evil dark. Fortunately, while I do have certain beliefs, I wasn't about to let my fear own me. Checked the beds for bed bugs, and to see if there was anyone under the bed. I am a dude, and yes, checking that thing is top priority. Man or woman's, it's just a good habit to have. Like checking your back seat before getting in the car to make sure no one is lurking there. I travel with a walking stick I carved from beechwood. Thing can break concrete, and a Bowie knife. Anyway, beds were good. There were the variety with a solid bedboard attached to the floor and what have you. Bathroom was actually very clean. Barring the entrance and the location, it was actually a really nice room. I turned the lights on and took a nap. No problem. Well, anyway, I woke up late and had a few drinks, ate my dinner and turned in with the lights out. I woke up because I am a defensive sleeper, and something was off, and in my window was a silhouette of a person outside my window. So I grabbed my knife and slid over to the window and peeked out. It was this girl. She was gorgeous, like heart-achingly beautiful. The kind of pretty that ugly dudes like me have no business even talking to her kind of pretty. Haha. I have dreams about her still. I know, this is how all horror stories start. Well, she was facing away from my window and looking at something down below, and she was kind of crouched down. Now she would have been invisible there from below, but the way the light hit my window I could see her. So, I slowly opened my door and looked out, and she reacted like I had just grew out of the ground. She fell down, so scared she couldn't even speak, and I got a real good look at her. The left side of her face was just red. I couldn't see her left eye because it was a bloody mess. Like blood everywhere. I quickly asked her if she was in trouble, and turns out, yeah, Def was in trouble. I got her into my room, left the lights off, and barricaded the door. I let her hold my knife because I didn't want her feeling helpless with a stranger after she had run away from something, especially in the dark. I stayed as far away from her as possible and kept my hands where she could see them, and made sure that if I did move, I moved so that she had all the power. AKA keeping my hands up or locked behind my head. When I would move past her, I would move slow and make a huge point of telling her exactly what I was going to do, getting her water and a towel, staying well out of grabbing range. Basically, treated her like a wild animal. Must have been the right thing to do because she started talking. Turns out her stepdad, who has been treating her bad for years, was drunk, and he had friends over. They beat her and assaulted her, so she managed to run away. Come to find out, they had a ton of LSD on them, and they were planning on dosing her with as much of it as they could. If you don't know, LSD in large quantities is an aphrodisiac, and yeah, it's awful. But anyway, her mom never believed her, and even made light of it, I guess. Anyways, the dudes had followed her to the hotel, and she had hidden by my door because it's like Mr. Invisible. She didn't even see the door till I opened it. Stepdad and his drunk friends were all yelling and banging on doors looking for her. So, we called the cops, and they came and arrested the blokes, and took her statement and got her to the hospital. Anyway, against my better judgment, I stayed in town for another day because I was wiped out and, well, curious to all. I mean, not every day you get a movie-quality adventure and rescue a damsel in distress. She came back later that day to thank me for helping her. She had a few friends with her, and they were doing right by her by being super protective. So just wanted to see me, and to let me know she was bailing out of town because she just couldn't be there anymore. It was weird, though. She just sat there with me for an hour just holding on to me, while sitting in my dingy hotel room, surrounded by these friends of hers. I swear if she had asked me to go with her, I would have. But I am pretty certain the last thing she wanted to have done was with another dude after all she had been through. I never went back to Missoula after that. In fact, I avoid Montana because of it. Spent one night in a cheap hotel in Manchester on our honeymoon, in between lovely week-long stays at nicer places in London and Edinburgh. Upon checking in, we had a difficult time just opening the door to get into the room because something was jammed against it from the inside. It turned out to be a painting face down on the floor. Presumably it had not just fallen off the wall because it appeared as though it belonged above the bed on the opposite side of the room. After dislodging the painting and coming in, we saw a large hole in the wall that looked like a head had smashed into it. The bed had a purple sequined pillow with tons of hair stuck in it, and only 2 of the 6 bulbs in the room and bathroom worked. The carpet and bathroom floor looked disgusting, and as a result, I never took off my socks at any point during our stay. The bathroom had mounts on the wall for a towel rack, but the bar for the rack was ripped off. Later in the day, we tried to relax with some TV and internet time to take our minds off the room's other flaws. The hotel advertises free Wi-Fi, but no network seemed to exist. Then we noticed that there was no TV remote anywhere in our room, and the TV had no buttons on it. I took a trip to the front desk to try to resolve these issues. When I asked about the internet, the clerk asked what room I was in, and then informed me that the internet probably won't work over there by room 17. I told him we had no remote for the TV, and he said he'd be over in 2 minutes to resolve that for us. He actually dropped it off hours later while we were out, and the remote didn't work. Before going to bed, my wife discovered a half-empty 2-liter bottle of Coke just sitting on the floor next to the bed. Sleeping was nearly impossible. We'd noticed in the afternoon that the toilet in our room flushed for an incredible amount of time. It seemed to continue flushing and making noise for 5 minutes. And the plumbing was so potent and the walls so thin that any time another person in an adjacent room flushed their toilet, you had the pleasure of listening to it run for the next 5 minutes as well. Drunken pub-goers on the sidewalk outside our room spent a solid half hour trying to organize a group photo under our window in the middle of the night, presumably because there was a lovely street lamp there that made it as bright as day outside our window at all hours. We probably finally got to sleep around 3 o'clock, but were jolted awake at 6 a.m. when it sounded like someone had kicked over a trash can full of hubcaps in our ceiling. No idea what that was. At this point, I discovered to my mild horror that part of the bedsheet had come off near my head, and there was a large burn hole in the exposed area of mattress. We decided we weren't going to risk using the shower, and just bailed before 7 to see if we could catch a train out of town early. I was in Madagascar for a study abroad, and a stomach illness was eating its way through the group. It would seemingly bounce from person to person, so somebody would be sick every day 2 days. We were traveling to our 4th hotel when it was my turn to be sick. The group dropped me off and got me settled in my room before they continued their day of activities. The hotel we pulled up to was straight out of that Keenan and Kel Halloween special. Suits of armor in the foyer, poorly lit, and a very creepy old owner who looked like he died years ago. We were the only people staying at the hotel, so it was also eerily quiet. There was also a cat that lived in the hotel and was howling for what felt like hours. The stairs to our rooms were magnificently large and ornate, and the hallways were pitch black. They were motion-activated but on a large delay. So you'd walk into the hallway, and they'd flicker after you've already walked past them. I got to my room and all I could think about was the sloshing in my stomach. My stomach contents were basically liquefied and I had fluids shooting out of both ends. I literally crawled into bed and fell asleep for hours. I was awoken halfway through my sleep to the sounds of my doorknob jingling for like 3 minutes before the door very slowly opened. I can see out into the hallway, but it's pitch black. The lights weren't activated. I said, "Hello?" And there was no response. I was in no condition to get up, so I just waited, and after like 20 seconds the door just slammed shut with a loud bang. I very badly had to go to the bathroom again, but I was too afraid to crawl my way back to it. As I finally mustered the courage to relieve myself, I heard the water in the sink begin to run, as if somebody was in there washing their hands. That's when I realized the door was open to the bathroom. I closed it because it smelled of vomits. I could feel the hairs on my arms stand and I wasn't sure what to do. I threw the covers over my head and just tried to go back to sleep. I woke again after a couple more hours and my group returned to the hotel maybe an hour before I woke up. I walked down to dinner, and everybody was sitting around this dusty large table staring at me like I was a ghost. They asked me if I was the one opening and closing their doors, or if I was the one knocking on doors and running away before they opened them. One girl said she heard a voice whispering through her window, but we were up maybe 3 or 4 floors. During the night I was knocked out cold and didn't experience anything else, but everybody in my group had to deal with constant door harassment, and more of them heard whispers. The cat also began to howl at about 11 p.m., and didn't stop until 1 a.m.